Brahma Gururvishnu Gururdevo Maheshwarah Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. In our last session, that was a couple of weeks ago, I suppose, we had completed up to the 17th shloka. Sanghatopi tatha naham iti drushya vilakshanam drashtaram anumanena nipunam sampradharaya. In our last session, we saw Satyananda Swarupam Dhisakshinam Bodha Vigraham Chintayatmaya Chintaatmataya Nityam Tyakva Dehadigam Dhiya. So this understanding the self as the gross body has to be given. Due to the body, mind, intellect identity, we struggle in life to fulfill the cravings of the body and the mind, to eke out some kind of joys or pleasure from this world, from this samsara. Gross body identity is the total waking plane consciousness experience. Now the thing is that a dreamer in the dream world can't even have a vague idea about the waking plane of consciousness unless he awakens to the waking plane of consciousness. So one cannot take this dhi or the intellect also to be the self. Usually we think that, okay, because intellect is guiding our life, we think and then we act accordingly. So we may think that sense organs, the gross physical body, the pranas, mind may not be the self, but intellect may be the self. But even intellect is not the self, because that also is insentient, inert, unless it is enlivened by consciousness, by the reflected consciousness. Dhisakshina. So this Sakshi is the self. And we have been doing this, we have been repeating it time and again. Nobody told us that we are the body, but we have taken it for granted that we are the body. On the other hand, the scriptures tell us, the great saints, sages and masters tell us that we are not the body, mind, intellect, equipment. And yet we find it difficult to accept that because we have been living thoroughly identified with that for lives together. Millions of lives we have lived. And it is not easy to give up this identity. So, Rupadi Manyata Pindaha Tatha Natma Ghatadivat Vyadadi Mahabhuta Vikaratvacha Kumbhavat. This also we have seen, this having form and so on. Now the gross body is the form. Now Pindaha Tatha Na Atma Ghatadivat. So like the ghata or the pot, which is the modification of the Panchamahabhuta, and it is inert and insentient, so also this forms, even the body is the modification of Panchamahabhuta, and that is insentient and jada, inert, and it is subject to modification like kumbha or the pot. So this cannot be the self. So therefore, this gross body cannot be the self because it is the modification of the Panchamahabhuta. When we did Panchadashi, at that time we had gone through this in great details. The five great elements, Panchamahabhuta, Akash, Vayu, Agni Tattva, Jala Tattva and Prithvi Tattva. These modifications of these five great elements form the gross and the subtle body. So they are all insentient, inert, and subject to modification and change. So this cannot be the self. Now, the disciple says that Anatma yadi pindaha ayam ukta hetu balanruta. So if you say that this gross body is anatma, not self, on the strength of all the arguments that we have given. So now, what is the self? You tell clearly. Karamlakavat sakshad atmanam pratipadaya. Karamlakavat. Like a fruit, amla fruit on the palm. So this is the problem we have seen, that we are used to studying any subject objectively. And when it comes to the spiritual science, this is a subjective science. So if we again try to objectify the self also, Atma also, which cannot be done. So now the disciple is also at the same level. So now he wants it as clearly as a fruit in the palm. He can see that Atma. And this is what it is. But then that is not possible. Though Guru explains to him, Ghatadrashta ghatat bhinnaha sarvathana ghato yatha deha drashta tatha deha naham iti avadharaya. As the seer of the pot is different from the pot. Ghatadrashta ghatat bhinnaha is different from the pot, the one who is a seer of the pot. And he can never be the pot, who is the seer of the pot. Similarly, deha drashta tatha dehi. Deha na aham iti avadharaya. So the one who is the seer of the body cannot be the body. Plain and simple. Here we have done the drashta drishya bheda, one of the reasons why we cannot be the body among the 14 reasons which we discussed in great detail. And one of the reasons is drashta drishya bheda. That which is drishya can never be drashta. That which is seen cannot be the seer. Body is a seen object, so it cannot be the seer. The seer of the body has to be distinct from the body. As the seer of the pot is distinct from the pot, similarly, the seer of the body is also distinct from the body. Na aham iti avadharaya. So it cannot be the self. This body cannot be the self. Then evam, and similarly, not about the body itself, evam indriya drug naham indriyani iti nishchinu mana buddhi tatha pranah na aham iti avadharaya. So similarly, like the gross physical body cannot be I also cannot be the sense organs, nor the pranas, nor the mind and its modifications called the emotions, feelings, and sentiments, nor the intellect and its modifications called the thought. So none of these can be I, because I am the seer of the modifications of the body, seer of the modifications of the sense organs, the pranas, the modifications in the mind, different types of emotions, feelings, and sentiments. I am the observer, I am the knower of that. And the type of thoughts that keep flowing through the intellect, I am the knower of that. Good and bad thoughts keep flowing through the intellect, I am the knower of that. So I have to be other than these. Then one may think that, okay, how about if they may not be individually, the body, sense organs, prana, mana, and buddhi individually may not be the Atma, but how about a combination of this? Sangatopi tatha naham iti drishya vilakshanam drashtaram anumanena nipunam sampradharaya. So, yes, a combination of the gross and the subtle bodies, that too cannot be the self, because they are anyway inert. A combination of two or more inert objects cannot make it sentient, cannot make it the self. So this again and again we have to ascertain that it cannot be the self, cannot be I. So up to here we had done in our last session. Now we begin a new shloka, shlok 18. Dehendriyadayo bhava hana divya pratikshama yasya sannidhi matrena soham ityavadharaya. Dehendriyadayo bhava hanadi vyapruti kshama yasya sannidhi matrena saha aham iti avadharaya. Now from here onward, Soham sadhana begins. The one due to whose proximity, the gross body senses, they function, mind and intellect functions. So that Sahaham, that I am. Here onwards, Atma is explained in its own way, because Atma is something that cannot put into words. Now, the teacher is trying to explain as much as possible. You see, matter, instruments that is made up of matter, like the body, mind, intellect, equipment, and the senses, they are consistently seen active. You see the body movements and all that thing, they're consistently seen active, sentient. So they appear to be sentient, alive in Jiva. Yet self doesn't function through matter. That is the most important thing. So it doesn't function through matter, as it is non-doer, akarta. Akarta, non-doer. Self is not a doer. Akarta, abhokta. It is neither the doer nor the experiencer. So it doesn't function through this matter. You see, and matter exists only in the egocentric plane of consciousness, not in the transcendental plane of consciousness. Matter doesn't exist, whereas the self exists in the transcendental plane of consciousness. So that is an important thing. But matter becomes dynamic only in the presence of the self. So yasya sannidhi matrena, only in the presence of the self, the body and the senses, they become active, and all their functions, hana divya pratikshama, that is acceptance, that is perception to the sense organs, and the rejection to the organs of action, the karmendriya. So that is all possible when it is in the presence of this pure consciousness. Like in the presence of the sunlight, everybody functions according to one's own inclination. All beings function according to their own inclination. So also in the presence of consciousness, the body, mind, intellect, equipment also, they attain, they are enlivened with sentiency, and they act according to their vasanas, their tendencies, all the beings. So according to their tendencies that they have inherited, the creatures, they live by instinct. Apart from human beings, all the other creatures, they live by instinct. So there is no new karma produced. They just have to exhaust the karmas, because of which they got the form. That's all. So they live by instinct. And human beings have brought the vasanas from the past life, and that vasanas produce desires in them, and the desires drive their action. Whether it is good or bad desire, accordingly they will act. So according to that, they will go about their lives. So the senses also, they act, they perceive the things, the karmendriya organs of actions, they are involved into all types of actions. Now, one thing has to be understood here very clearly, that all explanations are for an ajnani, for an ignorant one, to help end his brahma or his delusion. So that these explanations are given from the standpoint of an ignorant person, from an ajnani, because jnani doesn't need to study this Vakya Vritti. So ajnani, the explanation is given so that his brahma can end, because in the awareness of the self, there is no existence of any not self or anatma for the self to enliven. Now here it is said that self enliven means yasya sannidhi matrena deha indriya bhava and all that thing, but actually in the self there is no anatma for the self to enliven. It is ekameva advitiya, one without a second. Now, having said this here, we move on to the next shloka, shlok 19. Anapanna vikara san ayaskantavadevaya buddhyadishchalayet pratyak sohamityavadharaya. Anapanna vikara san ayaskantavadevaya buddhyadihi chalayet pratyak saha aham iti avadharaya. Now, apanna vikara is something that is subject to modification. Apanna vikara. Now, anapanna vikara is one that is not subject to any kind of modification or change. So, self is not subject to any modification, any vikara. It is avikari. Anapat. Anapat means innermost, antaratma, anapat. Now, in the presence of this self, the body, mind, intellect, and the senses, they act without the self getting affected in any way. It doesn't undergo any change or it doesn't get actively involved in anything. So in the presence of the self, body, mind, intellect, and the senses act without the self undergoing any change or actively participating in anything, getting actively involved in all these actions. Like, for example, so it is not affected at all. Whatever is happening in the body, mind, intellect, equipment, it is not affected. Like sun is reflected in the waters, and when the waters get disturbed, the reflection also gets disturbed. Sun's reflection gets disturbed, but that doesn't affect the sun. So similarly, though in the presence of the self, all the activities are taking place, but that doesn't affect the self, or now the self gets directly involved in anything like that. It is only in the presence these activities happen. Similarly, electricity or fuel is spent when it powers a device, isn't it? Either we use fuel or we use electricity to power a device, and after some time it will get spent. The fuel gets spent or the electricity will get spent. So does it happen like that? Because in the self is powering, so to say, enlivening this inert body, mind, intellect, equipment. So is there some loss in this self of its energy or anything like that? So that is not so. So this is not like the powering of a device where it gets the electricity or the fuel gets spent. No. In its presence, it happens like that. You see? So it doesn't change. The best example that is given is that here, ayaskantavad evayah. Ayaskantavad evayah. In the presence of the magnet, the iron filings, they keep moving in the presence of the magnet. But the activity of the iron filings in the presence of the magnet doesn't affect the magnet at all, or there is no loss in magnet at all. Loss of energy or anything like that, it is not there. Magnet remains as it is. The iron filings act according to the way the magnet is held below the paper on which the iron filings are put. So there is no loss of any energy as far as the magnet is concerned. So ayaskantavat, like a magnet. Ayaskanta is the magnet. So without affecting the magnet, it moves. So also the self, without affecting the self doesn't undergo any change, nor it is actively involved in anything, nor there is any loss in that, but in its presence, everything acts. Everything appears to be enlivened and they go about their work. So know that saha aham iti avadharaya. Know that to be the self, saha aham. Now, having said that, in the 20th shloka, ajadatmavada bhanti yatsa nidhyajada api dehendriyamana pranaha soham ityavadharaya. Ajadatmavad abhanti yat sanidhyat jada api dehendriya mana pranaha saha aham iti avadharaya. So now dehendriya mana prana, even though they are jada, they appear to be ajadatmavad, that is sentient, not inert, sentient. Abhanti and dynamic, so they appear to be sentient or conscious and conscious or dynamic. Yet sanidhyat, even though sanidhyat in the close proximity, even though it is jada. So inert is that which exists for others. Inert, insentient thing is that which exists for others, and sentient is that which exists independently. So the self is sentient, independent, and all the inert things are the things that exist for others, including the body, mind, intellect equipment. So these body, mind, and intellect senses are jada, inert, and made up of the gross and subtle bodies, subtle matter. But they appear to be conscious, sentient, enlivened. They appear to be that when they are in the illusory presence of the self. You see, when they are in the illusory presence of the self. Why illusory? Illusory because in the self there is no matter or anything else. It is ekameva advitiya. There is no matter or anything like that. So it is purna. Self is purnam itself. Therefore, that which is purna can only be blissful. That can only be paramananda, infinitely blissful at all moments, 24/7 every moment. That which is purna. When we say purna, means it is divided of three types of bheda. Vijatiya bheda, sajatiya bheda, and swagata bheda. There is no bheda or differences. It is one homogeneous mass of pure awareness. So, mind is of course jada, is insentient, and because of chidabhasa, reflected consciousness, it appears to be sentient. Without the reflected consciousness, mind is nothing but it is a subtle matter, inert matter. That's it. So mind and the senses perceive only because of the self, enlivened by the self. And though self is all pervading, though the self is all pervading, it is reflected only in buddhi, in the intellect, because there has to be a reflecting medium to reflect. Sunlight, sun shines everywhere, but sunlight is not reflected everywhere. It is reflected on certain surfaces only. You see, the surface is like on polished rock, polished granite, or polished marble, or water, and it is most reflected, maximum it is reflected in the mirror. So there has to be a reflecting medium for it to reflect. Though it falls everywhere, it is not reflected everywhere. So similarly, though this pure self which is of the nature of homogeneous mass of consciousness, pure awareness. It is everywhere. So, but it is not, everything is not sentient because of the reflecting medium. So therefore, all are not Chetan or conscious. The objects are inert, whereas the creatures are conscious, sentient. Now, having said that, in the 21st shloka, Adi Shankaracharya ji says, Agaman me manonyatra sampratam cha sthirikrutam evam yo veti dhivrittim soham ityavadharaya. Agaman me manah anyatra sampratam cha sthirikrutam evam yah veti dhivrittim sah aham iti avadharaya. Now, agaman me manah, my mind went anyatra, somewhere it went, sampratam, and now chasthirikrutam, now it is at rest, it is undisturbed, it is at rest. Evam yaha veti dhivrittim, the one who knows the modification of this mind and intellect equipment, the knower of that, saha aham iti avadharaya, know that to be the self. So, as we can very well watch our hands moving here and there, or we shake our legs also, we move our legs also, our fingers and all that thing, this we can watch very easily. A creature also can watch, an animal can watch its tail moving and all that. So that also can be watched. So also this Chidabhas, that is the reflected consciousness which enlivens the buddhi, mind intellect equipment. So it can watch all the modifications of the mind. But the knower of the one's own modification of the mind intellect equipment, that is the real self. So saha aham iti avadharaya. So always the knower is different from the known. Known can never be the knower. So if I know the modifications of my own mind, of my own intellect, I cannot be either the mind or the intellect. I have to be an entity other than the mind and intellect. And of course, we have seen this many times, that if we have to know the transformation or the changes or modifications in anything or being, we have to be outside the change of, outside the field of change or modification or transformation. We cannot be a part of that. You see, we cannot be a part of any modification or transformation and know the transformation. That is not possible. If we have to know the transformation, if we have to know the change, then we have to be outside the field of change or modification. So then if we have to be outside that field, that means we are none of that which is undergoing the modification. So we have known the changes taking place in our body, in our sense organs, in our pranas, in our mind, in our intellect. So if we are the knower of the modifications and changes taking place in this, we have to be an entity which has to be outside the field of this modification. And that is how we become the knower of this modification. And the knower has to be other than the known. It cannot be the known. So it has to be other than the known. So therefore, the self cannot be any of these which undergoes modification, and it is the knower of the modification. So, agaman me manah anyatra sampratam cha sthirikrutam evam yah veti dhivrittim sah aham iti avadharaya. So now, just as the sense organs are the knower of the sense objects, the mind is the knower of the senses, and the intellect is the knower of the mind, then who is the illuminator of the intellect? Now, this is brought about in the next shloka, Shlok 22. Who is the illuminator of the intellect? So whatever the senses are there, the mind knows. The knower of the mind is the intellect. Who is the knower of the intellect? In the 22nd shloka, Acharya says, Swapna jagarite supti bhava bhava udhiyam tatha yo vetya vikriya sakshat soham ityavadharaya. Swapna jagarite supti bhava abhava dhyam tatha yo vetti avikriya sakshat saha aham iti avadharaya. So now swapna jagariti supti, these three states of consciousness are there. When we say waking plane of consciousness, it is actually that of the intellect, not of the consciousness. Consciousness doesn't have any divisions. Consciousness is just one homogeneous mass. That's it. Like space. Space cannot have any divisions. Conditionings are put into space and then a label is given to that space. Four walls and a roof is put and then they say that this is hall space. And when the conditionings of the wall and the roof is removed, there is no difference between the hall space and the total space. It is all the same. On the walls, there is a pot space. Inside the pot, there is space. Outside also there is space. But there is no difference in the space which is within. There is no difference in the essential nature of the space that is within the pot and the space that is outside the pot. And the pot itself is in the space. So whether the conditioning of the pot wall is there or not there, it doesn't make any difference. The essential nature of the space inside the pot and outside is the same, and the pot itself is in the space itself. You see? So consciousness doesn't have any divisions as waking plane of consciousness, dim state of consciousness, and the deep sleep state of consciousness. Those are the divisions that are made according at the relative existence. But there is no such difference like pot space, hall space, bedroom space, kitchen space, a classroom space, and so on. These are the different labels given to space, but actually there is no essential change or difference in the space itself. Only these conditionings are put and then the labels are given. So the conditionings are put and then the labels are given like that. So in consciousness, there cannot be any division. As in the space, there cannot be any division. So it is just a homogeneous mass of consciousness without any division. So now, one sadhana can be done. What is that sadhana? Every day at night when we go to sleep, we can do this sadhana. The body, am I in the body or is the body in me? Is the consciousness the substratum of the body? Or I am supported by the body? So this thought has to be brought at the time, at the bedtime, when we go to bed at night. I am more outside the body than within the body. I am as much outside the body than I am within the body. Like the space, space is as much or more, infinitely more outside the pot than it is within the pot. Pot is just a conditioning. And then because of that conditioning, we label it as pot space. Similarly, the body is only a conditioning put on the self, which is the pure consciousness. So lying in bed, I am more so outside the body than I am within the body. The conditioning of body doesn't affect me. The presence or absence of the body doesn't affect me, my existence. You see, so one day the body will drop, and if we have not realized the self, we may get another body. So, but the thing is that we have to have this constant contemplation that I am the substratum of the body, lying in bed, whether the body is in me or I am in the body or I am the substratum of the body. I am as much outside the body or more so, infinitely more outside the body than I am within the body. And the presence or absence of the body doesn't affect my existence. So this continuously we have to do it. The Swapna Jagrati Sukti Bhava Bhava Dhiya Tatha. So similarly, as a lamp is not affected by what it illumines. So lamp is not affected what it illumines. Whether a lamp is on the stage or inside a pot or whatever it may be, it illumines everything that is going on in its presence without getting affected. So also this pure consciousness is not affected by what it illumines. That is an important factor. The self doesn't get affected by what it illumines. Illumining the modifications of the body or the modification of the mind or the intellect and so on, it doesn't get affected at all. So this intellect or this buddhi, it is limited and conditioned. But consciousness is not limited or conditioned. So because this buddhi is limited and conditioned, it cannot be the pure self. Because in a hurry, we may think that, okay, maybe intellect is the Atma because intellect does all the thinking and takes decisions and things like that. So maybe intellect is the Atma. In a hurry, we may say that, but it is not so. So intellect is also illumined by the same consciousness and it is limited and conditioned. So therefore, it cannot be the pure self, pure awareness, which is of course infinite and not conditioned by anything. Ekameva Advitya, non-dual. So it is only the presence of the self, the bhava or abhava of all the vrittis in the intellect, all the experiences, all the changes in the mind and the intellect, in the three planes of consciousness, they are all illumined by this pure self. Only in the presence of the pure self, the pure consciousness. So it is all known, and know that which illumines the bhava abhava, the presence or absence of the thoughts in the mind, intellect, equipment, thoughts and emotions, and the coming and going of the waking plane and the dream plane and the deep sleep state and their experiences, the illuminator of all this. So that is the self. Saha aham iti avadharaya. Yaha vetti avikriya, because that itself, the knower, that is not subject to any change. Everything else is subject to change. Now, having known this, we move on to the next shloka. Again, another example here Adi Shankaracharya gives in the 23rd shloka. Ghatavabhasako deepah घटादन्यो यथेष्यते देहावभासको देही तथाहं बोध विग्रहः घटावभासकः दीपः घटात् अन्यः यथा इष्यते देह अवभासकः देही तथा अहम बोध विग्रह. Now here the example is there. Ghata avbhasakah deepah, as the pot is illumined by the lamp kept inside the pot. Ghatat anyah yatha ishyate. So, as this lamp is considered to be an entity other than the pot, it is introduced inside the pot and it illumines the pot from within, but that lamp itself is not part of the pot. It is not the pot, it is an entity other than the pot. Deha avabhasakah dehi. So this body is also illumined by the pure self, Dehi. Tatha aham bodha vigraha. Bodha vigraha is the mass of homogeneous mass of pure awareness. So self is bodha vigraha, is always all pervading and the same in all creatures, in all things and beings all the time, illuminating all the perceptions and experiences of the body, mind, intellect, equipment, and their experiences as different perceptions, different feelings, and different thoughts without getting itself affected by what it illumines. As lamp is not affected by what it illumines. Sunlight doesn't get affected by what it illumines, or the sun doesn't get affected by what it illumines. Similarly, the self doesn't get affected by what it illumines. So always the illuminator is different, separate from what it illumines. See, Jiva is nothing but the self. Now Jiva is, as we have seen earlier also, Jiva is the same Paramatma, Brahman only with the upadhi of ignorance. So this Jiva is nothing but the self seen through the limitations of the body, mind, and intellect equipment and their activities. That is the self, that is the Jiva. So we need to wake up into the transcendental plane to end the sorrow of this samsara, the limited and the imperfect samsara of diversities, you see, which is again the delusory experience of the ego only. Ego, that is the Jivatma, the limited being. So this is what it is. Jiva is also the self alone, but seen through the limitations of the body, mind, intellect, equipment and their activities because of the wrong identity due to ignorance. But I am not that. Aham bodha vigraha. I am that pure self, which is mass of consciousness, of pure awareness. So again and again, Adi Shankaracharya is asserting this again and again, repeating it again and again, that because the identity is so strong, for an Ajnani, the identity with the body, mind, intellect, equipment is so strong that to disidentify is not so easy. So the Acharya has to give different examples again and again, repeat it, that how this is different from that. Similarly, you are different from the body, mind, intellect, equipment. Again and again, the repetition goes on like that. Now, having said that, in the 24th shloka, he says, Putra vittadayo bhavaha yasya sheshataya priyaha drashta sarva priyatamaha soham ityavadharaya. Putra vittadayo dayah bhavaha yasya sheshataya priyaha drashta sarva priyatam saha aham iti avadharaya. Now this is an important shloka also. This putra and vitta, that is the progeny, children and wealth and so on. Yasha sheshataya priya. So for whom it is dear, that is an important factor. We love ourselves the most, more than all the objects of pleasure, even the body, mind, intellect, equipment also. I am dearest to myself for my own sake. Objects or other beings are not dear to me for their own sake. No, they are dear to me for my sake. As long as those objects and beings give me some kind of joy, pleasure, or happiness, they are dear to me. So, and if they become a cause of my sorrow, pain, or misery, then of course, then I reject them, I discard them, I get rid of them, and so on. So, I am most dearest to myself. Sarva priyatam, drashta sarva priyatam. The seer is the most dearest. You see, now objects are dear to us as long as they are giving us some kind of joy or pleasure. The moment it starts giving us some kind of agony or pain, because actually they keep on changing, they don't remain the same. The same environment which gave us joy, that same environment can cause us pain also. This is the same thing. So when physical, mental, and environmental condition changes, then the same object, same being will cause us pain or sorrow. So that is what we have seen so many times. This is our direct subjective experience. This is not something which we do not know. We know it very well. When our physical and mental condition changes, our environment changes, and whatever was giving us pleasure at one time, it may no more give us pleasure. If it is not giving us pleasure, that is fine. But on the contrary, sometimes it can cause us pain also. So then we get rid of that. We love our gross physical body more than the objects. You see, because if we discover that these objects are danger, though that object is dangerous to my body, then we'll get rid of that object. Oh, that object is not good for my body, so I have to get rid of that. So then they become dangerous to the gross body, we get rid of that. But then we love our mind more than the gross body. So if anything in the gross body is causing pain to the mind, causing agony to the mind, then we want to get rid of that part. This is giving too much pain. I want to get rid of it. So operate it or discard it or whatever, get rid of that. So we go to the surgeon, get it operated out. Oh, this is causing too much trouble to me. It is better to get rid of it. So we love our mind more than the gross body. And then so we love our intellect or buddhi more than the mind. So we discard the mind if those emotions, those mental emotions, if they clash with our intellectual convictions, then we disregard the mind. You don't follow the mind. If or whatever the emotions are, if that is clashing with the intellectual conviction, then of course we'll get rid of that. And therefore, the conclusion that we draw is Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvam Priyam Bhavati. Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvam Priyam Bhavati. Everything is dear not for its own sake, but for the sake of the self. And self is the dearest to us of all. The Putra or the son is not dear to us for his own sake. He is dear to us for our sake. He is a source of joy to us. So therefore, for our sake, if he becomes a cause of pain, misery, or sorrow for us, then there will be no hesitation in discarding or rejecting him. So like that it is. So many times we have seen this happen, whether it is of close relationships, things like that. And when it becomes painful, what is the divorce happening? Divorce is also something like that only, when they cannot tolerate each other. At one time, they felt that they can live together, they can tolerate and all that thing. And then at some point in time, they thought that now they cannot tolerate each other, let us separate, let us divorce. So sometime they thought that they cannot live without each other. And then at another time, they think that, oh, if I live with this person, that will be torture for me. I have to get rid of that. So get a divorce and that's it, separate out. So this is what it is. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Everything is for the self alone. And if that is going to cause pain, then there will be no hesitation in getting rid of that or discarding it or rejecting it or whatever it may be. So, drashta sarva priyatam, the seer or the self, the pure self, is the most dearest to us. So, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. This has come so many times. We have discussed this also. Now, in the 25th shloka, Parapremaspadataya mana bhuvam aham sada bhuyasamiti yo drashta soham mityavadharaya. Param premaspadataya mana bhuvam aham sada bhuyasam iti yah drashta saha aham iti avadharaya. So in the previous shloka it was that drashta sarva priyatam, the seer is the dearest of all, and that alone I am, saha aham iti avadharaya, know that to be the self. Now here param premaspadataya, loved the most, param premaspada, loved the most, ma na bhuvam, I may not cease to exist. Aham sada, I should exist always, I should be there always. Bhuya sam iti yah drashta saha am iti avadharaya. So I should never cease to be, I should ever be aham sada, I should always be there, but I should never cease to be, like that. So everybody wants to exist continuously, immortal, eternal. Now here, up to here is Tvampada Shodhanam. It is the Vyatireka Sadhana. That is negating, I am not the Panchakosha or any of these body, mind, intellect, equipment and so on. This is the path of inquiry. Now here, in the concluding part here, in the 25th shloka, as in the previous shloka it was discussed, we love ourselves the most. The Param Premaspadataya, that is the love the most. And always, nobody wants to die. The fear is that most of us think that after death I go out of existence. That fear of going out of existence is there. If there is a 100% guarantee, a surety is given that you don't go out of existence if you drop the body, that fear of death goes away. And why we don't want to die, or why we cannot tolerate even the thought of death? Because it is alien to our essential nature. The death or destruction is alien to our essential nature. Our essential nature is Sat Swarupa. Sat Swarupa means existence, pure existence. Sat Swarupa. So there is no question of going out of existence. Because our essential nature is Sat Swarupa, therefore our subconscious mind cannot accept the notion of death or going out of existence. And because of our own ignorance, we do not know. And in ignorance, that is what we see everywhere. People talk about death and people dying and all that thing. Oh, one day I will also die. And this body will go away. Then I go out of existence. So this is what happens. And nobody wants to die because it is our essential nature. It is a part of our essential nature, a continuous existence. There is no question of any death also. It is an alien notion. The very notion of death is alien to our essential nature, and therefore it is not acceptable to us. Even the notion of sorrow, misery or pain is alien to us. Nobody can tolerate even the slightest sorrow. Nobody wants even a slightest sorrow, misery or pain in our life. Nobody wants it. If our essential nature was being miserable, we would have accepted and we would have not done anything to get rid of that. But the very fact that we cannot tolerate even the slightest sorrow, misery or pain in our life. Like our eyes are very delicate organ. It cannot tolerate any foreign particle. Even a minute piece of hair also falls into that on the eyeball, immediately the tears will come to get rid of that. It cannot tolerate it. It is against its nature. No foreign body can be tolerated on that. Similarly, it is against our essential nature to be miserable or in pain or in sorrow. That is against our essential nature. So that is not accepted. So therefore, mana bhuvam, because ignorance, I do not know that I have been existing always. Because of my ignorance, I do not know. And therefore, I can make this, I don't want to go out of existence. I should always be. I should exist ever, eternal, like that. And I'm loved the most. I love myself the most. Mana bhuvam aham sada. Bhuyasam iti yadrashta. Saha am iti avadharaya. We love ourselves the most. There is a story about a grihastha disciple telling his guru, actually, I also want to follow you. Leave everything and be with you and follow you wherever you go and all that. And do my sadhana and all. But what to do? My family loves me too much. They will be all hurt, you see. I don't want to hurt them. My mother, my wife, my child, my brother, sister, and all that. So Guru said that, are you sure? We'll have to put it to test. So Guru gave him some potion and told him that after tonight's dinner, you have that and you go to bed. And because of this potion, what will happen is that your breathing will become very shallow and very low, and no one can detect it also, your breathing. That cannot be detected also. Your pulse, your heartbeat will also slow down and become so low, no one can detect it. People will think that you are dead. But you will be able to hear everything. You will be conscious, you will be able to hear everything. And then you hear what is happening. So that was decided. And then he had his dinner, went to bed and lied down. And then suddenly his wife discovered that he is not making any movement and there is no breathing or anything like that. She started wailing that he's dead. So then everybody gathered and started weeping and wailing and crying and screaming and all that. At that time, this fellow's guru enters. So immediately they all catch his feet. Please save him, please bring him back to life. So Guru said that I have got a limited power. I can definitely bring him back to life, no doubt. But then somebody else will have to sleep in his place. And I can see very well that you people very much love him. So one of you will take his place, I'm sure. So then this Guruji asked the mother, you are his mother. You have lived your life. For your son's sake, you will take his place, isn't it? And the mother said, no, I have just got my grandchild and I have to take care of that child. So I have very much required in this world for him, for his sake. So the mother excused herself, and then everybody had their excuses. Then Guruji told his wife, how about you taking his place? If I take his place, who will look after my child? He's just so small. I have to be there to look after him. Then Guruji told the son, won't you take the place of your father? Then immediately the wife said, how dare you can say that to my child? And then she made a statement. Anyway, whatever had to happen has happened. We'll manage somehow without him. At that moment, the effect of the medicine wore off, the potion wore off, and the disciple woke up. And then he told Guruji, let us go. Now they will manage on their own. That is what they have said right now. So let them manage on their own. We'll go on our way. So the thing is that Param Premaspadataya, we love ourselves the most. Self is most beloved, innermost. And Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvam Priyam Bhavati. I will conclude this up to here and we'll take up the next session from the. Now here one sadhana we can do. The simplest way of uniting this Dravya Shakti, Kriya Shakti and Jnana Shakti is to make it Ichha Shakti to merge with the Sushumna Nadi through Bhakti Yoga. You see, and Namasmarana, that is the best way. Through then the senses and the mind will not disturb us. So we can use in Bhakti Yoga any Namasmaran, Hari Om or Sri Rama or Om Namah Shivaya or Vedantic one like Soham that can be used. So that will also help us in this sadhana where the mind and the senses will not disturb us. So with this, we conclude today's session, and the Shlok 26th onwards we'll take up in our next session. Now, if anybody has got any questions on the topic that we covered today, you can ask.
Swamiji,
Yes.
you suggested an exercise before going to the bed at night. Ask body is mine or I am in the body. So unless I transcend my BMI, isn't it difficult to realize that?
Yes, but we have
body is within me, or is it the exercise to transcend the body, mind, and
because
intellect?
We have done a previous exercise, no doubt, about why we cannot be the body, sense organs, pranas, mind, and intellect. We have all the proper reasonings for that, isn't it? So with that reasoning, we come to the conclusion that I cannot be this. So that is fixed. Now while lying in the bed, I'm infinitely more outside the body than I am within the body. The presence or absence of body should not affect my existence. So that can be because we have done the study. Therefore, this sadhana can be done. If those who have not done the study of why I cannot be this body, mind, intellect equipment or the panchakoshas, and those who do not know the proper reasonings, the intellectual reasonings or the scientific reasonings why I cannot be that, for them this will be difficult. So as we have done it, so we are the sadhakas, we have done this reasoning, so we should find it comparatively easier to do this sadhana. That, well, I cannot be this, we have done all the reasonings like that, and I'm more outside the body than within the body.
But as you mentioned, that identification is so strong. Even we have done this exercise number of times. We have been doing this Sandhikal and all those things. We are doing it, but the identification is so strong that we follow this practice, but we reach at somewhere down the line a void condition, isn't it? Intellectually, yes. Conceptually, yes, we can realize. But actually, do we really transcend all this and experience what we are?
The thing is that continuously when you keep doing it, it will strike just flash like that. Because this practice has to be done continuously. We have done for millions of lives, we have seen I'm the body. And now for a few years, we are saying I'm not the body. So millions of lives, that brainwashing that has been done, to clean that, it will take some time. But we should not give up the practice. That is important, you see. Okay, it is not easy, it is difficult, it may be very difficult, but it is not impossible. We have to understand that we have been doing this wrong identification, we have been living with that for millions of lives together. And it can happen in a flash, just like that, because even in that ignorance, during that millions of lives, you are nothing but Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Parabrahma Paramatma Swarup alone and nothing else. Now that we have given some time to understand our own self, after living for millions of lives, we have questions, we have so many doubts in our mind, we have questions about our own existence, about the world around us, more so about our own existence. And now we are moving on to that path, discovering that, we are inquiring into it, And one by one, we are understanding things as they are, the world outside, what I am, what I identify with, what is the real nature of that which I identify with, and so on. So therefore, as a spiritual seeker, this sadhana can be done, not to somebody who has not done this study. For that person, it will be impossible.
Okay, Swamiji. Anyway, let somebody ask the question, then I'll come back. Anybody else? Anyway, what I wanted to say is this, that as we move on, as we are progressing in from one book to another book to even today, Vakya Vritti, the Chadan means climbing is becoming very steep now as we go to the summit, isn't it?
Yeah, the last few the steps in the summit, that is the real thing, you see. But the thing is that it is steep, but it is short also. The other climb takes a longer time, but the last one, a little bit is left, though it may be steep, no doubt, but it is short also, isn't it?
It is something like walking on the tight rope without any support.
You are your own support. Here you have all the support. You are the support of everything. You are the substratum of everything.
Yeah, Swamiji, agreed, enjoying, but definitely it is a little, I find it a little steep as far as the subjective realization is concerned.
Yeah, it is no doubt steep. It is not easy. Had it been easy, everybody would have been realized by now, isn't it? So it is not easy, no doubt. It is difficult. It is very difficult, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that it is impossible. What we need to do is that we need to be at it. The contemplation has to go on. Reflection and contemplation should go on continuously. We do not know at what moment it will click like that. And the revelation comes, and that's there you are. Because we have always been that. And just because of certain obstacles, impediments are there, obstacles are there, we are not able to. The moment those obstacles goes away, the realization happens. So this is what it is. It is the time, because Atma is there always. Only because of our ignorance, the dirt that we have collected over the lives together, what we are doing is basically cleaning up that thing. Once that is cleaned out, that's it. The mirror is there and mirror reflects our image. But because of the dust that has been collected for years together, we have to just clean it up. We don't have to bring our image in the mirror from anywhere. The moment the mirror is clean, the image is there. So we are the self, but we have collected a lot of useless things and then identified with that, and therefore we have lost track of our own real self. So one by one, when we understand the reality of the world around us and the existence itself, slowly the mind will stop running around inside the outside world. When it stops there, then more and more that mind can be applied to the higher contemplation. When we are moving around also throughout the day also, it is not that we have to specially sit for it for some time somewhere. No. Throughout the day also, whatever we have heard, okay, we have heard this in this text, it was said like that, and then this was said it like this, and then we got these kind of reasonings, and it goes on like that while walking somewhere or while traveling somewhere. It goes on inside, the contemplation goes on. And while we go deeper and deeper, we get some insights also. That gives us a joy. Oh, I didn't think about this like that. So the insight we get like that. So this has to be continuous. Therefore, spirituality is a 24 hours full-time job. It is not a part-time job, 5-10 minutes or an hour satsang we attend and that's over. But throughout the day, in and through all our thoughts, feelings, activities, it has to manifest. Then we are living a spiritual life, you see. Through what we say, what we think, the feelings we entertain, and what activities we do, throughout that, it has to reflect in that. Then we are living a spiritual life.
Swami, sometimes I feel that 6 months we must also go to the Chinmaya ashram and then spend right in the morning from 4 o'clock to the night, you know, that kind of dincharya, you know.
Oh, 4 o'clock in the morning till the night, and the various classes and the satsangs and meditation and the Narayan Seva. Oh.
Swamiji, Puttaparthi, we have been doing this. When we go there, we get up at about 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock starts, meal starts, then Om and Suprabhatam and all those things. Whole day. Even if you are in the room, you are not one corner, the full corner of the mind is towards Satya Sai Baba. That we have to go. In the bhajan, we have to go. In the evening, we have to go for the bhajan. And even the night we come back, we go to bed early, about 9:30. And in the morning, again, we wake up at 4:30 for the Nagar Sankirtan and all those things.
Right.
And it has got a lot of very deep impact on our mind during 10 days, 15 days that we were staying there, So similarly also, 6 months bereft of this world. No,
actually, for a Grihastha, once in 6 months at least, a Grihastha should go for a week or 10 days in an unknown place and stay in an ashram and live as an ashram and an ashram life. And follow the dinacharya of that ashram.
Sairam, Pankaj Bhai.
Yeah.
Sairam Swamiji. Yes. Actually, Pankaj Bhai expressed exactly the thoughts that was going on in my mind. Because for a Grihastha ashram, it is so difficult to contemplate all the time. There are so many distractions pulling you here and there. Yes. Whereas when you are on your own, there is so much more one can contemplate.
Right.
So I agree with him. I think we should really
you must organize the
from time
Swamiji,
to time.
You must organize the retreat,
Yeah, if not for 6 months like that, but at least for a week or 10 days,
a week.
Retreat. Once every 6 months, you see, for a week or 10 days, it can be done where we stay away from everything and then we strictly follow a daily routine of an ashram life. Wake up in the morning and then get ready. Then you start with meditation, the chanting and meditation and all that thing. Then the morning class, satsang and all that thing. So throughout the day. So at least if once in the 6 months fight for a week or 10 days, that can be done because Grihasthas are very busy with their Grihastha life. So if somehow they can manage to take 8-10 days out of that every 6 months, so that will be at least 2-3 weeks in a year. So going away and you refresh yourself, energized, and then come back. And then you lead the sansaric life, but then whatever you have bought, so that is also playing in your mind all the time. So that helps in our sansaric life also. Our attitude changes towards the world around us, towards the people around us. In our professional life also, it helps us a lot, how we deal with people and all that thing, because it brings about a transformation in our thinking, in our feelings and things like that. And that brings a change in attitude also. And then it reflects in our actions. Whether we are in the society, at our workplace, dealing with different kinds of people, so it reflects that. It brings a tremendous change. So we live that spiritual life. That is good.
Any question from anybody? Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
So shall we conclude then?
I think so, Swamiji. Yes, sir.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Harihi Om.